I always thought the beginning of the end would come like a fire, loud, dramatic, impossible to ignore. I didn't expect it to show up in the form of a single notification on a quiet Tuesday night. We had just gotten home from the grocery store. I was hauling bags inside, half listening to Laura talk about some issue with her work schedule. I set a bag on the counter and reached for her phone, which was vibrating over and over. I wasn't snooping. She had asked me to check the grocery list earlier, so it didn't feel like a big deal, not until I saw the name flash across the screen. Dan, wine glass. The wine emoji did it. It hit me like a punch in the chest. That small symbol changed everything. I didn't recognize the name, but the context was clear, or maybe it was the tone I felt in my gut. A man's name with that little wine glass next to it didn't say business to me. It said flirtation. Laura snatched the phone from my hand like I'd just stolen something sacred. She didn't even look up. Just grabbed it, locked it, and shoved it into her back pocket. Her tone turned icy, flat, and defensive. "He's just a client," she said, not even trying to sound casual. "Don't dig into it." I blinked at her. I didn't know how to respond. We weren't a couple who policed each other's phones. That had never been us. But now she was guarding her screen like it held national secrets. The worst part? She didn't even try to lie well. There wasn't a trace of guilt, just annoyance, like I was the one in the wrong. The air between us changed in that moment. You know that feeling you get right before a storm hits? That eerie stillness, like something's holding its breath? That was what it felt like in our kitchen. I stood there, frozen, one hand still resting on a bag of groceries, staring at the woman I'd spent over a decade loving and not recognizing her. Later that night, I checked. She had a new lock screen password. She had never set a password before. We'd always been open about that stuff. We shared passwords like most couples share leftovers. There was never a reason not to. Until suddenly there was. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was scared of what I'd find if I pushed. It was easier in that moment to pretend it didn't mean anything. To convince myself she was telling the truth. But the seed had been planted. And it grew quickly. The next few days felt strange. Laura moved like she was on autopilot. She wasn't cold exactly, just distant. Her eyes didn't linger on me the way they used to. Her hugs were shorter, tighter. The casual in asterisk Macy, the kind built over years of shared inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, and road trips with bad playlists, it was disappearing. Then, 3 nights later, she sat me down on the edge of our bed and said she needed space. "I'm losing myself," she said, folding and unfolding her hands like she was rehearsing something. "I need to figure out who I am again. I'm not the same person I was when we got married." I stared at her. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. What do you even say to that? It wasn't the first time I'd heard of couples taking a break. I always thought it sounded like a soft launch for a breakup. And now here it was, in my living room, wearing my wife's face. "You're not leaving me, are you?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "No," she said quickly, maybe too quickly. "I just need time. I've been overwhelmed and I feel like I can't breathe lately. I need a reset." It was such a convenient explanation. Clean. Non-threatening. A pause, not a stop. It was dressed up to sound like growth, like some kind of noble pursuit. But in her eyes, I saw something else. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but I saw it, relief. She wasn't scared to leave. She was itching to. She found a rental apartment across town. Signed a 3-month lease. I helped her move some of her things, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to say no. I was still trying to be the supportive husband. Still hoping this was just a phase. A temporary fog we'd find our way out of. I even blamed myself for a while. Maybe I had gotten too comfortable. Maybe I didn't notice when she started slipping away. It's easy to lose track of a relationship when work piles up and daily life becomes routine. Maybe I stopped making her feel seen. That's what I told myself, that this was just about rediscovery, not someone else. But I couldn't shake the image of that notification. Dan, wine glass. Who was he? Why did his name pop up on her phone so late at night? Why the emoji? Why the sudden privacy? I didn't dig further, not yet. Not because I trusted her, but because I was afraid of what I'd find. I wanted so badly to believe that she just needed space. That this wasn't the beginning of the end. But deep down, I think I knew better. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The little patterns she didn't even realize she was changing. She stopped saying "I love you" before bed. She used to kiss me on the cheek every morning before work, even if we'd been fighting. That stopped too. She stopped wearing her wedding ring. When I asked about it, she said, "I don't like how it feels when I'm typing all day. It gets in the way." That was new. She used to say the ring made her feel grounded. I kept track of these things quietly like I was gathering clues for a mystery I didn't want to solve. But every new detail added to the weight in my chest. Every lie of omission, every half-truth, every new wall between us. I started sleeping worse. Waking up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering where she was physically, emotionally. Wondering if she missed me at all. We still texted. Still called. But there was a delay to her replies. A distance in her voice. She'd say things like, "Don't worry about me," or "I'm doing okay," as if I was a roommate checking in, not her husband of 11 years. I tried to visit her apartment once. I brought her favorite Thai food and knocked on her door. She answered, but barely let me in. She looked surprised, almost annoyed. I wasn't expecting company, she said, tugging her sweater sleeves down past her hands. I asked her if we could talk, really talk. She said she had a work call in 10 minutes. She sat with me for 5. Didn't touch the food. The goodbye hug was quick. Mechanical. That night, I sat in my car outside her building for a long time, just watching the lights in her window. She had always told me I was paranoid. That I overthought everything. But this didn't feel like overthinking. It felt like falling. After Laura moved out, the silence in our house became deafening. At first, I tried to fill it. I turned the TV on for background noise, kept the lights on longer, cooked like she was still coming home. But eventually, even that felt forced. The more I tried to pretend nothing had changed, the more obvious the change became. She was gone, and in her absence, my mind had way too much room to wander. That's when the flashbacks started. It's strange how things that once felt harmless suddenly take on a new meaning. Like how she used to work late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said she had client trainings out of town. I never questioned it. Laura was ambitious. She loved being the best at her job. I even admired it. But now? Those trips started to feel like missing puzzle pieces that never quite fit the picture. She never sent photos when she traveled, never FaceTimed from the hotel like she used to. If I asked for a quick call, there was always some excuse: bad Wi-Fi, battery low, early meeting. At the time, I chalked it up to her being busy. Now I wondered who she was too busy with. And then there was the cologne. It happened about 6 months before all this. I still remember the exact moment. She came home from one of those overnight trips, and when I hugged her, there was this scent on her that stopped me cold. It wasn't hers. And it sure as hell wasn't mine. It was sharp, expensive, unfamiliar. When I asked, she laughed it off. Said she'd flipped through a magazine at the airport and tried one of those paper tester strips. Just some new scent, she said, waving it away. I didn't think much of it. Maybe I didn't want to. But now I kept wondering, why did she lie so easily? Why didn't I notice that before? She used to laugh a lot. That was one of the things I loved most about her. Her laugh was warm, real, the kind that made other people around her start smiling even if they didn't hear the joke. But I hadn't heard that laugh in months. Somewhere along the line, she'd started smiling less. Laughing less. With me, anyway. Maybe someone else had picked up where I left off. Conversations had gotten weird, too. Subtle at first, but undeniable in hindsight. I'd say something simple like, "I missed you today," and she'd reply with something like, "Why are you always keeping track of me?" Or I'd ask her what she wanted for dinner, and she'd say, "You decide. You always do anyway." Everything I said, even the most innocent things, seemed to become evidence against me. Like she was rewriting the past in real time, trying to justify something to herself. And maybe that's exactly what she was doing. I didn't want to become that guy, the one who scrolls through his partner's social media looking for hidden meanings. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, I found myself doing exactly that. Her Instagram had gone quiet. No new posts, no stories. But she was still active. I could tell. And she'd started following new accounts: wine bars, travel pages, fitness influencers. Stuff she never cared about before. She also stopped liking my posts. It's stupid, I know. But after 11 years together, when the little public acknowledgements stop, you notice. Especially when they stop only for you. I thought about calling her. So many times. Just to ask the question outright, is there someone else? But I was afraid of the answer. Afraid of how calm her voice might sound when she said yes. Or worse, how practiced. Instead, I stayed quiet. I tried to play it cool. I didn't want to push her away if there was still a chance she'd come back. But the truth is, I think I knew she already had one foot out the door and the other pointed towards someone else. Then one night, about 3 weeks into her space, I found myself driving past her new place. I told myself I just happened to be in the area. I told myself it wasn't weird. But when I saw her car wasn't in the driveway, I couldn't pretend anymore. It was 9:30 on a Thursday, one of her old training nights. And just like that, all those scattered memories from the last year started rearranging themselves into a story I hadn't wanted to read. The pieces fit together too well. The late nights. The weekend conferences. The cologne. The sudden obsession with privacy. The way she twisted my words to feel like pressure. It wasn't about freedom. It wasn't even about her needing to find herself. It was about someone else. I went home that night and stared at the ceiling for hours. My stomach churned like I was back in high school after a bad breakup. Except this wasn't high school. This was my marriage. This was my life. And it was slipping through my fingers. I started remembering the other signs, the ones I didn't even recognize as signs at the time. Like the time she changed her phone plan without telling me. Said it was just easier to have separate data now that she was working remotely. Or the way she stopped sharing her calendar with me, said it was too cluttered and easier to manage solo. She had already begged asterisk and untethering herself from our life. And I had let her. I blamed myself for a while. I thought maybe I'd made her feel trapped. Maybe I'd stopped trying. Maybe I took her for granted. But then I remembered something my friend Sam once told me years ago when we were talking about a coworker who cheated on his wife. He said, there's no perfect marriage. But good people don't cheat. They talk. They fight. They go to therapy. They don't sneak around. They don't lie to your face while calling it love. That line came back to me like a ghost and it stuck. I wasn't perfect. I never claimed to be. But I didn't deserve betrayal. I tried not to spiral. I focused on work. I caught up with old friends, most of whom didn't know anything was wrong yet. I told them Laura and I were taking a break and left it at that. But inside, I felt like I was sitting in the wreckage of something only I could see. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. Some days I hated her. Some days I missed her so much I could barely breathe. And through it all, I kept seeing that name flash in my head. Dan Wineglass. He wasn't just a client. I knew that now. And it was only a matter of time before I'd get the confirmation I didn't want. You know that moment when your worst fear stops being a fear and becomes a fact? It doesn't come with fireworks. It's not cinematic. It's quiet, a sharp click in your brain when everything lines up and there's no more room for doubt. That moment hit me on a random Saturday night when I wasn't even looking for it. I was at home, half watching a football game I didn't care about, just trying to get through the evening without checking Laura's socials again. I hadn't heard from her in a few days, which was starting to become normal. She didn't call to check in anymore. The texts when they came were vague little pings of doing okay or just busy. I had stopped replying. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound desperate or angry. Then my phone buzzed. It was Sam, my oldest friend, the kind of guy who still sends me random memes at midnight and never remembers which days I work late. We hadn't really talked much about what was going on with Laura. He knew we were on a break. That was it. The message was just a link. No caption. No explanation. Just, thought this was Laura? I opened it. Instagram story. Reposted by a mutual acquaintance who tagged the bar they were at somewhere in Austin, one of those trendy spots that looks like a converted barn but sells $16 cocktails. There were 3 clips. The music was loud, the lighting low and amber, the kind that makes everything look golden and soft. And there, right in the middle of the second clip, was Laura, sitting on some guy's lap. His hand was on her thigh casual, like he'd done it 100 times before. She was leaning into him, her face glowing. And she was laughing. Not just a chuckle. That full-bodied laugh, the one that used to be mine. The one that used to echo through our kitchen on lazy mornings or erupt during late-night card games. She had given that laugh away. My thumb hovered over the screen, frozen. For a second, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. But then she turned toward the camera. Just briefly. It was her. Same green jacket I'd helped her pick out last Christmas. Same way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she laughed too hard. Same expression she used to give me when she felt safe. Only now it was for someone else. And I didn't even need to ask who he was. The puzzle pieces fell into place before I could stop them. Dan Wineglass. That emoji. That message. The coldness. The late nights. The lock screen. The space. The reset. All of it was camouflage. All of it was just her slowly turning the dimmer switch down on us while turning it up on him. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I think I stood up. Maybe I dropped my phone. I remember pacing back and forth like a caged animal. My mouth was dry. My heart was pounding. But I wasn't shocked. That's the messed up part. I wasn't even surprised. I just kept hearing this voice in my head saying, there it is. That's it. That's the truth. And the weirdest part? I felt relief. It wasn't good relief. It was the kind you get when the thing that's been clawing at your brain finally stops pretending to be a maybe. It was over. The fog was gone. The lie had unraveled itself, and there it was, out in the open. Laura was cheating on me. There was no more taking space. No more pretending she needed to find herself. She had found someone else. And I had just watched her laugh in his lap like she hadn't torn my life in half. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I didn't screen record the video or message Sam back. I just sat there. I think part of me broke that night, but it wasn't loud. It was quiet. Numb. Like watching something you love slip through your fingers and realizing you don't even have the energy to close your hand. Eventually, I got in the car and just drove. I didn't know where I was going. I took back roads through the hills, past old neighborhoods, gas stations, playgrounds we used to pass on weekend drives. Every turn felt like it peeled off another layer of the life we'd built together. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But the pain had gone past tears. It was something else now. Something colder. Like when you burn your hand too badly to feel it right away. That kind of pain. The kind that makes everything after it feel dull and distant. By the time I pulled into a diner 2 towns over, it was almost midnight. I walked in, ordered black coffee, and sat in a booth by the window like some cliché from an indie film. I stared out at the empty parking lot and kept replaying the video in my head, her laugh, his hand, the way she fit so comfortably into someone else's life. That's when it hit me, she was already gone. Laura hadn't left me that night. She'd left a long time ago. I was just the last to find out. And maybe that's what hurt the most, not the betrayal, not even the infidelity. But the fact that she had let me keep trying while she had already moved on. I thought about all the things I wanted to say to her. All the things I could text, call, scream. But none of it would matter. Words couldn't stitch back what she'd already burned. So I made a decision. When I got home, I walked into her bedroom, took off my wedding ring, and placed it on her nightstand. I didn't slam drawers or throw things. I just stood there for a minute, letting the weight of it all settle into my bones. Then I grabbed a trash bag and started cleaning out her side of the closet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was done. I didn't know exactly what the next steps would be, not yet. But I knew this, I wasn't going to let her keep me on a hook while she played house with someone else. I wasn't going to beg for answers from someone who had already chosen silence. This wasn't a crisis. This wasn't soul-searching. This was betrayal. And that night, I quietly chose to stop being the guy waiting by the door. I didn't want her back. I wanted my life back. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my parents. Not my coworkers. Not even Sam, and he was the one who unknowingly dropped the hammer. The moment I saw that video of Laura on Dan's lap, something in me shifted. Not shattered, that had already happened, but shifted. Like a lever being pulled. I realized I didn't want explanations. I didn't want apologies. I wanted distance. So I started creating it. The morning after, I woke up earlier than I had in weeks, and started removing her from the apartment piece by piece. Her shoes by the door. Her toothbrush. Her half-used bottles of shampoo lined up like a shrine in the shower. The picture frames in the hallway that featured both of us smiling at weddings, barbecues, vacations. I boxed it all up. Every item I picked up felt like a question I'd never get an honest answer to. When did she stop loving me? Did she think about me when she was with him? Did she ever actually plan to come back? Or was that just a safety net in case things with Dan didn't work out? The questions burned, but they also pushed me forward. I didn't rage. I didn't smash anything. It was almost methodical, therapeutic even. Every drawer I cleared felt like reclaiming air that had gone stale. Then I did something symbolic. I took off my wedding ring, that solid little circle that used to mean forever, and I drove to a pawn shop 3 blocks from our first apartment. I handed it to the guy behind the counter without ceremony. He weighed it, gave me a number, and I took the cash. It wasn't much. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I walked out of that store lighter than I'd felt in months. That night, I bought a new chair for the living room. Something clean and modern, different from the worn couch we picked out together in our 2nd year of marriage. I wanted something that was only mine. I wanted to look around my home and not see her ghost in every corner. I also bought new boots. Small thing, maybe, but it mattered. The old pair had memories in them, road trips, anniversaries, the last wedding we attended before she started pulling away. The new ones? They were just for walking forward. And I did walk forward slowly at first. I enrolled in a photography class at the local arts center. It was something I had always talked about doing but never followed through on. Life always had excuses, work, chores, plans with Laura. Now that those things were gone or poisoned, I had no reason not to say yes to myself. That first night in class, I felt out of place. Most of the people were younger, artsier. A couple of them already had fancy cameras and lenses that looked like something from a spy movie. I showed up with my old Nikon and a notebook, not sure what I was hoping to find. But something happened during that first assignment. The instructor sent us out to take 5 photos of stillness. I ended up on a rooftop parking garage just before sunset, standing in the breeze with nothing but the hum of the city and the shutter click in my hands. I took pictures of empty benches, power lines silhouetted against fading light, a crumpled coffee cup rolling along the pavement. And for the first time since Laura left, I didn't feel like I was chasing answers. I was just there. In the moment. Seeing. Breathing. It wasn't a grand transformation. It didn't fix everything. But it was the first moment that didn't feel dictated by pain. The thing about betrayal is that it convinces you you're broken. It makes you question everything, your instincts, your worth, your ability to be loved. But when you start doing things just for you, you remember that your life wasn't just a byproduct of theirs. It had its own shape. Laura wanted to live without me. So I helped her see exactly what that meant. I didn't text her. I didn't check her social media. I stopped wondering what Dan looked like or how long it had been going on. The answers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had stopped sitting in a burning house asking the person holding the matchstick to explain themselves. One day, about 2 weeks later, I was sitting at the park after class, sorting through a stack of printed photos I had taken. The sun was going down and I noticed how quiet it had gotten, not just around me but inside me. It hit me then, sitting on that bench with my new boots and my camera and my clean apartment waiting back home, I wasn't waiting anymore. I had stopped holding my breath. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt alive. You never really know how broken you were until you start feeling whole again. It had been about a month since I pawned the ring and boxed up the life I thought Laura and I were building. In that time, I had stopped expecting her text tone. I had stopped waiting for the "I made a mistake" call that every movie promises after the credits roll. I had finally started living in the silence she left behind and finding out it wasn't silence at all. It was peace. I had finished my second photography course and signed up for a small group exhibit at the local community arts center. Nothing huge, just a few of us displaying work in the corner of a downtown gallery during one of those wine and cheese art walks. Honestly, I almost backed out. I didn't think I was ready to show people something I made. But I went. I told myself it wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about showing up for myself. That night, the gallery was buzzing. People I didn't know were wandering around with plastic cups of Cabernet, squinting thoughtfully at prints and murmuring things like texture and composition while chewing on brie. I stood by my section of the wall, 5 photos from that rooftop garage. Stillness. Shadows. Golden light on concrete. And that's when I saw her. Rachel. She was standing in front of one of my prints, head tilted slightly to the side, arms crossed in the way people do when they're actually paying attention. I didn't recognize her at first. Not until she turned and smiled, that kind of surprised, warm smile you give when a familiar face shows up somewhere unexpected. "Mark," she said. It took me a second. Then it hit me. Rachel Myers. We had a few classes together back in college. She was in the graphic design program while I was still undecided and taking every course under the sun trying to figure myself out. I remembered her laugh. Her oversized sketchbooks. The fact that she always had ink on her fingers. "Wow," I said, probably too loud. "Hey, Rachel. It's been. God, how long?" "Too long," she said, and it wasn't one of those polite things people say. It sounded like she meant it. We started talking right there in front of my photos. She asked how I'd gotten into photography. I gave her the short version. She told me she was working at a boutique design agency in the city. I asked if she was still painting. She smiled and said, "Not as much as I should be." The conversation should have fizzled out. That's how these things usually go. A nice hello, a little nostalgia, and then you both move on. But we didn't. We kept talking. Even after the crowd thinned. Even after they turned the lights low and started stacking chairs in the back. Eventually, we wandered outside, both clutching warm plastic cups of cheap wine. It was a crisp night, the kind that makes the city feel softer. We stood under the awning while the streetlights buzzed overhead, and I told her I'd been going through some things. She didn't press. She just nodded like someone who understood what it meant to carry something heavy. "It's good to see you," she said. "You seem steady." I almost laughed. "Steady's a new thing for me." "Then it looks good on you," she said, her voice quiet. We exchanged numbers. I didn't think much of it. Not in a "we're about to start dating" way. Just, she felt familiar. Safe. Like someone who remembered a version of me I'd almost forgotten existed. Over the next few weeks, we started texting. Nothing dramatic, just little check-ins, music recs, pictures of books we found at thrift stores. She invited me to an art talk at her agency one Thursday evening, and I went. She brought me coffee the week after when she heard I was editing photos at the park. Things grew from there slowly, naturally, without pressure. And here's the thing that caught me off guard. It felt real. Not performative, not complicated, not like I was trying to fill a void. Rachel didn't want anything from me. She wasn't patching a hole or looking for drama. She was just there. With her, I didn't feel like a broken man trying to convince someone he was worth saving. I didn't feel like I had to explain my past in order to earn a place in her present. I could just be honest, human. We started dating. Casually at first. A few dinners. Late-night walks. Hours in bookstores where we'd pretend we were looking for something but mostly just talked in low voices in the poetry section. One night, a few months in, we were sitting on a bench outside her apartment. It was quiet. The kind of silence you don't need to fill. She looked at me and said, "I know you've been through something rough. You don't have to tell me all of it. But I just want you to know. I see you." That sentence. Those 3 words. I see you. It gutted me. Not because it hurt, but because it healed. After all the gaslighting, the distance, the double life Laura led behind my back, I had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. To be spoken to without an agenda. To have someone look at you and not measure your worth by what you used to be. That was the moment I realized I had stopped bleeding. I still had scars. I probably always will. But the wounds weren't open anymore. I wasn't waking up hoping for closure from someone who couldn't even give me honesty. I wasn't rehearsing arguments in the shower or stalking her Instagram like a detective. I wasn't angry. I was just healing. Rachel didn't fix me. But she reminded me that I wasn't broken beyond repair. And sometimes that's all we need to believe in again. I didn't expect to see her again, not like this. Rachel and I were out for dinner when I caught sight of Laura across the room. She froze mid-step like she'd seen a ghost. I gave her a polite nod and turned back to Rachel. That should have been the end. But the messages started, first casual, then pleading. "Can we talk? I miss you. You were my home." I ignored them all. Then she started showing up. Outside my building at places I frequented. Once she waited in the rain with mascara running down her face, arms wrapped around herself like she couldn't believe I wouldn't open the door. But I didn't. She had chased freedom and now she was haunted by it. It was her sister who called. "Laura's in the hospital," she said. "Pills. Alcohol." I went not for her, but for myself. She looked small in that hospital bed, eyes swollen, voice trembling. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "I lost you." I nodded. "Some mistakes can't be fixed," I said. I meant it. As I walked out of that room, I felt something loosen inside me. For the first time in this entire mess, I felt peace. She was no longer my burden. No longer my responsibility. Laura was my past. And I was already living in something better, my future.